Alrighty, hey everybody, happy Tuesday. We're here for Teach It Tuesday. I am going to hop right into our content, doing a quick pop-up training, how to fight fear and overcome overwhelm. I am Phylicia. I'm the founder here at Seek God Slay Goals, and thank you all for being here and a part of our community. Um, so I wanted to do this pop-up training. This is actually something older that I did last year, but just in my conversations with people recently, I've been noticing a lot of talk about fear. And then also this whole idea, we're hopping right into the second quarter of the year. And many times, two of the major things that keep us from reaching our goals are fear and overwhelm. So I want to talk about how to fight fear and how to overcome overwhelm. So as you come in, even on the replay, invite your friends to the group so they can gain access to this information. And yeah, share this out, share this with your friends, your families, your community. And if you're here, just pop a comment in so I can know you came in, even if it was live or on the replay, so I can say hi to you. So um, first part, we're gonna talk about how to fight fear. So fighting fear, the first thing, and I'm looking down at my notes, so that's why I keep looking down. But the first thing that you have to do when you're fighting fear, when you're fighting anything in general, the first thing that you have to do is that you have to understand who or what it is that you're fighting against, right? So you have to know what fear is. You have to understand what fear is. You have to understand where fear comes from. You have to study your opponent so that you can be able to win against your opponent. So like, for example, in football, when football teams go up to play against each other, usually they'll watch the tapes of their opponent so they can study how they move, so they can study how they operate, so they can know who the players on the other team is, so they can know, how what their strategy is, what different plays they make. And so that's the same thing when it comes to fear. We all experience fear at one point at another in our lives, and if we do not take control of it, if we don't fight fear, it can really control our lives and stop us from walking in purpose and stop us from slaying our goals and all of those things that we need to be doing in life. So you have to understand who and what you're fighting against. So you have to study your opponent. So let's define what fear is. Okay, so I have a definition here, two definitions. The first definition says that fear is an unpleasant, often strong emotion caused by anticipation or awareness of danger. Okay, so it's an unpleasant or strong emotion caused by anticipation or awareness of danger. So you're anticipating that you're going to be in danger, or you're anticipating that something bad is going to happen. Okay, the next definition is that fear is a painful emotion or passion excited by an expectation of evil or the apprehension of impending danger. Okay, so it's based on something that you think is going to happen, right? So many times fear comes into play when it's, fear of starting your business because you think oh, you might fail, fear of getting married, fear of there's so many different fears out here, right? So it's a painful emotion though, but it comes from the apprehension of impending danger or impending failure, or getting hurt, so that's what fear is. And so as you are fighting fear, you have to understand that fear did not come from God. Fear did not come from God, okay? 2 Timothy 1:7, it says that for God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind, right? And so this is one of my favorite scriptures. I say this pretty much in almost every training that I do because, fear is such a heavy thing for believers, for many believers. But when you think about fear, and if the scripture says that fear did not come from God, that God did not give us the spirit of fear, then that lets me know that it came from the enemy. And so if the enemy has given me this spirit that is trying to stop me from doing things that God has called me to do, then that means if I allow fear to win, if I allow fear to rule and control my life, I am then co-signing the agenda of the enemy. I am then co-signing the agenda of the opponent, right? And so I don't want to do that. And so I have to continuously renew my mind and remind myself, okay, fear did not come from God, so I can't let fear stop me in this moment. Okay, so understand that fear did not come from God. So when you are fighting fear, this requires you to be conscious and intentional, right? You have to be very intentional with your actions. Just like I said, I had to think about, the scripture that fear did not come from God. This is an intentional thing. You can't fight fear haphazardly. You can't just randomly fight fear. You have to be strategic, you have to be intentional, and you have to be very conscious about your thoughts, and you have to be very conscious about your actions, right? And so note that you have to fight fear. You're not trying to get rid of it, right? You're not necessarily trying to get rid of it, but you have to fight it. You have to fight against those feelings. And so ask yourself, why are you fearful? Why are you even fearful, right? A lot of times we just feel fear and we just let fear win, and we don't even know why we feel this fear. And many times if we sit and we analyze and we dissect the emotions behind why we're fearful, we will realize that our fear is coming from a place that is not even validated, right? So ask yourself, why are you fearful? Where did it come from? How can you tackle or minimize the risk associated with what it is that you're going to do? Okay, you have to remind yourself the source of fear. Okay, so ask yourself why you're fearful. Remind yourself of the source of the fear. Remind yourself that fear did not come from God. So God is on your team. He wants you to fight fear. The enemy does not want you to fight fear. He wants you to allow the fear to overtake you and stop you from doing the things that you have been called to do. Okay? Then you have to shift your focus from the actual fear to the Father, right? So you have to shift your thinking. What are you focusing on? You should be focusing on the Father, focusing on the one, who is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all that you can think. Focus on the one who's the provider. Focus on the one who loves you. Focus on the one who will never leave you nor forsake you, right? Don't focus on the fear that you're feeling. Focus on the one who has a plan for your life, like plans to prosper you. So focus on the Father and the promises of the Father rather than focusing on the actual fear itself, okay? And then you have to fight fear one action at a time, right? So in the moment, it's again, this takes focus, this takes intentionality, this takes you being conscious. So in the moment, you fight fear one action at a time, one action at a time. So it's not like all at once you're just going to try to fight fear in every area of your life. But that moment where that fear creeps up, you have to take an action that's going to combat that fear in that moment. So fight fear one action at a time. And then once you do it, you're going to feel the fear. But once you do it anyway, most of the time you will find that the fear or the apprehension that you had, you'll realize it after you do it that it really wasn't that bad after the fact, right? You'll become more comfortable. The more that you do something, you become more comfortable, and that fear will begin to subside, right? We have fear because it's unknown. We're going into uncharted territory, right? But you have to feel the fear and do it anyway. Fight fear one action at a time. And the more you do it, the more comfortable and more confident you will be, which will lessen the fear, okay? So one of the things that I used to have a fear of, and I don't, it wasn't a fear that I spoke on a lot, but I had a fear of public speaking, or even just like speaking to people in general. Some of you may have already heard me tell this story, but I used to literally get anxiety when I had to like make phone calls to people or do any type of public speaking. And so had I let that fear of this speaking or interacting with people take over my life, I would never be in the position or the place that I'm in my life right now. I would have never started a business. I would have never been in ministry. I would never be leading a group called the See God Slay Goals movement. I would never be doing teachings. I would never be preaching, all of these things that come along with public speaking. And even, I still get nervous when I have to do it. But when I say, okay, I feel a little bit fearful and I'm still going to do it anyway, that's fighting fear one action at a time. That's being very intentional and conscious and not letting the fear control my life, right? So you just have to be the same way with whatever fears you may be facing. Okay, so just to do a quick recap, you have to understand who or what you're fighting against. So study your opponent, understand how fear works. You have to understand how the enemy works and why he wants you to be fearful and remain in fear. You have to understand that fear did not come from God. And so when you're fighting fear, it then requires you to be intentional and conscious. So then you can go through these steps. Ask yourself why you're fearful, and if there is any way that you can minimize the risk. Remind yourself the source of fear, reminding yourself that the source of the fear is not a good source, okay? Shift your focus from the fear to the Father and fight fear one action at a time, okay? So those are just a little bit of a few tips that you can use if you're feeling fearful about something, about taking a jump, about anything in life. Those are some things that might be able to help you. Okay, so now really quick, let's hop into this whole idea of overcoming overwhelm, right? So I know many of us, we may feel overwhelmed in life just by all of the responsibilities that we may have, you know, maybe just work, business, if you have kids, just everything that you may be responsible for, ministry, it can all seem like a lot. And many times, some people deal with overwhelm in different ways. Sometimes some people who are feeling overwhelmed, they just shut down and end up not being productive and doing anything at all. And that becomes a hindrance, again, to us being able to conquer and accomplish our goals. And some people, they do a little bit better with it, and they're able to really strategically handle the overwhelm and process it. But for those of us who, I know I'm the first category, I get overwhelmed and I'm like, okay, don't want to do anything at all, right? Like those days you have so much to do, and instead of doing what you need to do on your to-do list, you end up just, you know, sitting on the couch and watching TV, right? I've had those days. So the definition of overwhelm is to overpower in thought or feeling. To overpower in thought or feeling. So that means that whatever circumstances are going on, they have taken power over your thoughts and your feelings. And so the first thing that you have to do to be able to overcome the overwhelm is that you have to take back the power. You have to take back the power that these circumstances have taken, right? So instead of the circumstances having power over you, you have to take power over the circumstances, okay? And that's the first thing. Then you have to dissect, identify the source of your overwhelm. So why are you overwhelmed? Is it overwhelmed because you're trying to do everything by yourself? Right? So I'm going to give you guys a little strategy. It's 3Ds. Dissect, divide, and distribute. Okay, because again, like I said, most of the times when we're overwhelmed, it's because we have a lot on our plates and we're trying to figure it all out, and our circumstances have taken power over us. So once you take your power back, then you want to dissect, divide, and distribute. Okay, dissect, divide, and distribute. So dissect is identifying the source of your overwhelm. So why are you overwhelmed? Is it that you have taken on too many projects? Is it that you're trying to balance a business and a home life when really you need to be focusing only on your home life right now? Is it that you've said yes to too many things and you need to say no to some things? Is it that you are volunteering, you know, for X, Y, and Z where you need to be in a season of not volunteering? So you have to identify what the source of your overwhelm is. You know, are you experiencing emotional overwhelm? You know, are you connected to people who emotionally overwhelm you? So does that mean that you have to set some boundaries in some of your relationships? Okay, so first thing, dissect. We're talking about overwhelm. This is a quick little strategy for you to help you overcome overwhelm. The first thing is you want to dissect. Identify the source of your overwhelm. And then you want to divide. You want to break it down. Okay, so usually overwhelm looks like this. Okay, you want to compartmentalize it and put different things into different categories. Okay, and so many times we're not able to do that because it just seems like a whole big blob of stuff, and we have to say, okay, this is family, this is business, you know, this is my volunteer time, this is my personal time, or whatever the case may be. Begin to divide the different areas that you have responsibilities over in your life, and once you divide it, you may find that your pie, you know, your circle, your pie is divided into too many parts. Okay, your pie may be divided into too many parts. Okay, after you divide, then you have to distribute. So once you've divided everything, some of those things you'll keep for yourself, but there are some things that you may have to distribute and give to other people, or delegation, right? So maybe for example, if you run a business, there may be some tasks that you have to distribute or give to hire some people so that you're freed up and that lessens your overwhelm. Okay, or it may be that you have, I don't know, you have some people come in and babysit your kids on certain days so that you're a little less overwhelmed. Whatever the case may be, you have to identify the source of your overwhelm, divide it up, and once you have all of your slices, then you have to distribute. You have to say, okay, this is what I can keep, this is what I can handle, and now this is what I'm giving to somebody else. You have to take back your power, and sometimes taking back your power means that you have to let go of some of what you want to control. Okay. Okay. So dissect, divide, and distribute. So for me, some of the areas that I used to be overwhelmed in was my schedule. You know, a lot of people can get overwhelmed with their schedule, but I did just what I told you guys to do. I had to identify why was I so overwhelmed? Where was this coming from? Then I divided up all of my different tasks, all of my different responsibilities, and I realized different categories that I was responsible for. So there was ministry, there was business, there was family life, there was personal life, and then I divided. There were some things that I had to keep, and then there were some things that I distributed. I had to take some stuff off of my plate, and I became less overwhelmed. And that was the same thing with like some of the debt that I had. I had student loan debt. Hey, Angie. I had a lot of student loan debt, and I was overwhelmed with it. It was like, oh gosh, I don't even want to think about it. It seemed like a lot, but when I really sat down and identified where all the different sources of this student loan debt came from, I was able to divide it up and say, okay, this is from here, this is from here, this is from here, this is from here. And I then was able to come up with a manageable plan to be able to pay down the debt. So the overwhelm was lessened. Okay. So that's your quick strategy for overcoming overwhelm. We already talked about fighting fear, but you want to dissect, divide, and distribute. Okay. Dissect, divide, distribute. So this was just a quick little pop up teaching that I wanted to share with you guys, just because in conversations with people, I've just been hearing a lot of fear in people's talk. People aren't necessarily saying that they're fearful, but just by how they speak and their resistance to certain things, you can see that fear has taken control or taken hold, and overwhelmed has paralyzed a lot of us. And so I just wanted to share some of this information with you. So if this was helpful, share it out with your family, your friends, whoever. And then I'll pop back in maybe next week to do another training. If you guys let me know a topic that you are feeling like you want to have a discussion on, or what some strategy on, let me know and I'll come in and do another topic. Hey, Leia. For you guys. So I'm going to hop off now. I will do a Bible study next week as well. We'll do a Bible study next week as well. So make sure you guys are tuned in and active here in the group so you can get the notifications for everything. Okay. So thank y'all for tuning in. Please share this out or invite somebody to the group so they can watch it. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.